I was slicing an apple over the sink when the phone lit up with Tom's name, 1 week before Christmas. His voice sounded busy and smooth, like he was already late to something. He said they'd be with Lisa's family this year because they have a bigger table, and then he added that I might feel out of place there. Bigger table, out of place. I held the phone to my ear and watched the apple brown in my palm. The part that stung wasn't the words, but how practiced they sounded. You won't believe what happened next. They were shocked by what I did after. Before we go on, please subscribe to the channel and let us know where you're watching from in the comments. I leaned my hip against the counter and said I understood. That's the trick of getting older. Your mouth tells people it's fine, while your chest burns like a campfire you can't put out. Tom kept talking, filling the gaps with reasons that sounded like apologies if you didn't listen too closely. Schedules, car seats, Lisa's parents coming in from Cleveland, the kids needing their routine. I murmured, sure, and no problem. He said he'd swing by sometime after New Year's, and maybe we'd do a small thing then. I could picture him looking at his watch as he said it. After he hung up, the kitchen went quiet in that special way winter knows. The furnace clicked on. Wind moved the bare maple branches against the window. I rinsed the knife and felt the weight of the call settle. Where my late wife's coffee mug once sat Mary from next door had given me a plate of oatmeal cookies the night before. I didn't feel like eating. I set the phone on the table and let my eyes drift to the paper calendar where I still draw little X's over the days. 7 boxes until Christmas. 2 weeks earlier he'd asked for a little extra with the mortgage, just until his year-end bonus hit. I remember how his voice went warmer then, how he said, "Dad, it would help so much, just a couple of months. You know how Q4 is." I told him I'd cover it, like always. It felt good at the time, like I still had a way to matter. Today those words crawled back to me dressed in different clothes. Bigger table. Out of place. People think humiliation is loud. It isn't, it's quiet. It collects in the corners, sits on the chair beside you, follows you from room to room, and waits patiently for you to admit it's there. I stepped out to the porch and breathed the cold air. My street on the edge of Columbus was half lit with early decorations. A neighbor across the way was fiddling with a string of lights that kept dying. I watched him, hands in my jacket pockets, and told myself Tom didn't mean it the way it sounded. He had kids. He had a life. I repeated that until the words turned to dust. Inside, I made coffee and stood by the little Christmas tree I'd put up in the living room. It was the same one I'd used the last 3 years. Plastic branches, a few old ornaments, a star that leaned slightly to the left. I thought about the first time I helped him move into that house. He and Lisa had been so proud. The place was new construction, open kitchen, tall ceilings. He'd joked about the mortgage being a third roommate. Back then I believed the house would be a nest where our family would circle back and land. I paid the first month to give you two some breathing room. 1 month turned into many. I never made a show of it. I signed the transfer, shut the laptop, and went on with my day. I took my phone and scrolled through our messages. There was the picture of my grandson in a Halloween costume, a pumpkin with little legs. There was the "Thanks, Dad," from the last time I covered the property tax. There was a shrug emoji from Tom when I asked if they wanted me to bring the fryer for the turkey this year, back when I still thought we were together. It amazed me how a whole relationship could be documented in tiny rectangles that never include the things you really feel. I dialed Tom back and let it ring twice before I hung up. I didn't know what I would say. That I could sit at any table and find my place? That I'd eaten out of tin mess kits in the desert and felt more at home than I did in their polished dining room? None of that would help, and it would only make him defensive. In his mind, he'd done the responsible thing. Organized, efficient, managing expectations. It wasn't personal. It was logistics. I went to the bedroom and opened the top drawer, where I keep a worn folder with bank papers. The December transfer reminder was there, printed and underlined like I'm my own secretary. Due in 3 days. I tapped the paper with a knuckle and felt a steadiness move through me. Not anger. Not yet. Something quieter, like deciding to turn off a faucet that's been dripping and keeping you awake at night. It wasn't about punishing him. It was about stopping the part where I kept paying to be told I didn't belong. Still, I didn't press any buttons. Not that day. A man can make a decision and still show himself the grace of sleeping on it. I closed the drawer and walked to the garage, where the smell of motor oil and old wood calms me down. There's a workbench I built from 2x4s. I sat on the stool and ran my hand over the grain. My wife used to sit there with a cup of tea while I fixed whatever had broken that week. I talked to her in my head the way I do when I don't trust my voice. "You hear this, honey? Bigger table. Out of place." She would have told me to keep my dignity. She always did. Around dusk, Mary knocked. She wore her red scarf and said the wind was mean today. She didn't ask many questions. She never does. But she has a way of seeing the shadows that pass over your face. We stood on the porch and watched the neighbor finally get his lights to flicker on. The house glowed a little uneven, like a smile with a chipped tooth. "Looks better that way," Mary said. "Perfect's overrated." I nodded, and that simple sentence loosened something in me. After she left, I heated a bowl of chili and ate standing up. The wall clock ticked loud. My phone buzzed with a marketing email about a sale on standing mixers. I laughed once. A bigger table, a better mixer, a brighter centerpiece. Sharp tools for a dull feeling. I rinsed the bowl, dried it, and put it back in the cabinet. I don't like dishes in the sink overnight. Later, in the living room, I pulled the fleece throw over my knees and let the local news hum in the background. I tried to picture Christmas morning at Lisa's parents' place. Linen napkins. Candles that look better unused. Maggie's clipped laugh. Tom performing his competence like a man on a stage he thinks he built. The image steadied me more than it upset me. It showed me where I stood. It's strange how clear things get once you stop begging them to be different. I took a pen and drew a thin line across the December 25th square on my paper calendar. Not to cross it out, but to mark it. A quiet mark. This year would be different. Not loud different, not a scene. Just different in a way that mattered to me. I turned off the TV, unplugged the tree lights, and stood in the dark long enough for my eyes to adjust. The room looked honest without the glow. In bed, I lay on my side and listened to the furnace push warm air through old vents. Somewhere down the block, a car door slammed and a man coughed. I thought of Tom as a little boy, how he used to press his hand against mine and measure the difference. I didn't feel anger then. I felt distance, and the knowledge that he had chosen it. That was the truth I needed to stop avoiding. He had picked his table. I didn't need to pretend I still had a seat. I woke once around 2 and padded to the kitchen for water. The phone sat face down on the table, the screen cold and black. I didn't turn it over. I already knew what waited there. Ads, reminders, weather. Nothing new. On the way back to bed, I paused by the little tree and straightened the star so it stood less crooked. It leaned anyway, refusing perfection. Mary was right. Better that way. By morning, I knew what I would do. I wouldn't argue. I wouldn't explain. I would let the week roll forward, quiet as snowfall, and I would keep my own counsel. This Christmas would be the first in a long time where I chose myself. I brewed coffee, buttered toast, and opened the drawer again, not with shaking hands but steady ones. The paper waited. I read the numbers one more time, the due date circled in red. Then I set the paper down and closed the drawer. Not yet. Soon. I wanted my head clear when I did it. I wanted the choice to belong only to me. Easton was dressed up like a postcard the next afternoon, all white lights wrapped tight around bare trees and red bows stuck to railings that didn't need them. A brass quartet played, "Hark, the herald angels sing," near the fountain, their breath visible in the cold. I'd driven over to pick up a small gift card for my mail carrier and a toy truck for my grandson, something that lit up and made a noise when you pressed the cab. The parking lot was half chaos, half ballet. People steered carts with one hand and phones with the other. I walked slower than the rush and let it flow around me. It felt good to be out, among strangers who didn't expect anything from me but a nod. Inside, the heat hit and carried cinnamon with it, the kind that makes you think of kitchens you used to have. A Salvation Army bell clanged near the entrance. I tossed in a few singles and moved toward the corridor with the toy store. Every storefront had a display shouting for attention. Clean sweaters folded like they'd never meet a person, fake snow blowing from hidden vents. I found the truck I wanted after a few minutes, blue with a silver stripe, simple and sturdy. The clerk rang it up and wished me a merry one. I said the same, and for a second I believed it might be. I should have gone straight back to the car. Instead, I let myself wander. I stopped at a kiosk to look at gloves and turned. When I heard a laugh, I knew. Lisa's laugh was neat and clipped, a sound that never had to apologize for itself. She and Maggie were standing by a window full of crystal ornaments, their shopping bags resting against their boots. Lisa wore a cream coat that looked expensive and didn't suit the weather. Maggie had her hair tucked into a knit cap and a smile that suggested she had already passed judgment on the world and found it entertaining. I could have slipped away. There were at least 50 people between us, and a man my age can blend in if he wants. But I stood there, eyes on a shelf of mittens, and listened. I didn't try to be sneaky. I was close because the aisle was narrow. They didn't lower their voices, so either they didn't see me or they didn't think it mattered. Maggie held up a glass reindeer and said something about the table's centerpiece being clean and modern this year. Lisa said she wanted the dinner tight. No extra chairs, no last-minute add-ons. The words made my chest tighten even though they were about furniture. Then Lisa said, and this time I told Tom, we're keeping it focused. No rambling stories at the table, no awkward pauses. Maggie laughed in agreement, a little too pleased with the line. They moved on to seating arrangements and timing. Who would say the toast? How to pace the courses so the roast didn't dry out. It wasn't what they said. It was the way they said it, like they were rehearsing a show, and every line had to land. I turned the mitten over in my hand and saw my reflection in the shop window. A man in a dark jacket with a blue toy truck bag, and eyes that had gotten older while no one was watching. I took a breath and stepped forward. I didn't plan words. I just didn't want to be the ghost in a place where I was still alive. Lisa, I said, when there was a gap in their talk. Maggie. They both looked up. Surprise first, then that polished shift Lisa does, where the face becomes sweet without changing a thing beneath it. Oh, she said. John, we were just shopping, so I hear, I said. My voice was even, almost friendly. I nodded at the reindeer in Maggie's hand. That one won't last long with little hands around. Maggie smirked and set it back anyway. Lisa gathered her bags and stepped an inch closer like she was making space for courtesy. We're getting ready for the big night, she said, and her tone tried to be neutral. Trying to keep things simple this year. Simple is good, I said. Simple makes the food taste better. Maggie tilted her head. And keeps conversation on track, she added, not bothering to pretend she wasn't aiming at me. Lisa gave her a look that said, not now, but the message had traveled. I felt a small heat rise in my face, then cool again, as quick as it came. I've stood in rooms where men were screaming and managed to keep my hands steady. Amal can't undo that. The Allah? I won't keep you, I said. The Allah. Just wanted to say hello. If you need a carving knife, mine holds an edge. Happy to drop it by. Dia wasn't trying to be clever, I was being practical, the way I know how. Lisa smiled a polite smile. We're covered, she said. This time we're going for a smooth flow, you know? No interruptions. This time, I repeated, quietly enough that only I could taste the words. I met her eyes then, not angry, just clear. If my face said anything, it said I had heard them, really heard them, and that I wouldn't forget. Lisa shifted her weight and adjusted the cuff of her glove. Well, she said, have a good afternoon. Then they moved away, still talking, their bags brushing their coats like small, obedient dogs. I stood there until the reindeer in the window went from cute to ridiculous. Then I walked the long way around to the exit, past the food court where a boy was crying because his pretzel fell to the floor. His father crouched and tore off a clean piece from the other side and offered it like a peace treaty. The boy took it, the world reset. The simple repair of it made me want to sit down. Instead, I carried the toy truck to my car and set it gently on the back seat, as if it were a fragile thing instead of plastic and batteries. On the drive home, I let the radio play soft old songs. Traffic crawled past storefronts that promised the holiday could be purchased if only you got the right set of mugs. A line from something my wife used to say floated up. Don't measure people by their decorations. I turned off before I reached my street and drove an extra loop through a neighborhood with larger houses. A lot of roofs were outlined in white, and a few had those projectors that splash green dots across the siding. Through one window I saw a family laughing, heads thrown back, a scene so tidy it could have been staged. Maybe it was. Most things are when you're looking from the outside. Back at home, I set the toy truck on the coffee table and stood over it like a general reviewing a map. I pictured my grandson pressing the button, the lights blinking, the satisfied little sound he makes when a toy obeys him. I tried not to imagine the gift sitting under a tree in a house I had helped pay for, unopened because I wasn't there to hand it to him. That picture cut, so I set it aside and went to the kitchen instead. The laptop lives on the small table by the window. I opened it and signed in to the bank. The numbers came up like they always do, black on white, unemotional. The mortgage transfer sat there in a neat row, scheduled with the confidence of a clock. I clicked into it and read the details, even though I knew them by heart. The account it draws from. The amount that never gets smaller. The date. 3 days from now. There was a button on the right that said, Cancel. I moved the cursor over it and let it sit there without clicking. My hand didn't shake. It simply waited, as if the part of me that acts needed permission from the part that remembers. I thought of Tom asking for the bump, until the bonus. The practiced warmth in his voice. The praise that wasn't praise. Just a tool to get him where he wanted to go. I thought of Lisa's smooth phrase at the mall. No extra chairs, no interruptions, and how Maggie turned, conversation on track, into a little knife. I thought of how a bigger table can be a smaller world if the wrong people are in charge of the seating. My finger hovered and hovered, and in that moment I could feel the two paths laid out in front of me as clearly as tire ruts in fresh snow. I didn't press it. Not yet. I closed my eyes and listened to the house. The furnace kicked, a soft whoosh. Pipes ticked. Somewhere outside a dog barked twice and then decided against a third time. I pulled my hand back and rested it on the table. A man can be pushed, but the decision still has to be his. Tonight wasn't about making a point, it was about taking stock. I shut the laptop and sat with the quiet. The anger I expected didn't arrive. Something else did. Resolve, low and steady, the kind that doesn't call attention to itself. Before bed, I took the truck out of the bag and pressed the button. Lights flashed. The little engine noise rasped to life. It was a cheerful sound that didn't know anything about tables or guest lists. I turned it off and set it on the shelf by the door. If I needed to, I could bring it over after New Year's. Or not. I brushed my teeth and caught my reflection. I looked like a man who has learned how to move without making waves. That used to be my pride. Lately, it felt like a habit I might have to break. In the dark, under the weight of blankets and the long Ohio night, I replayed the mall until it lost its edges. People say words don't hurt if you don't let them. People say a lot of things. What matters is what you do next. I let that thought settle. The calendar would turn, the days would pass, and in 3 of them a number would try to leave my account. My hand would be there when it asked permission. I would answer it then, not today, not from pride, but from a place I could stand on without wobbling. Tom texted around noon that he was swinging by real quick, which always meant my door would open before I had time to answer. I had just finished washing the coffee mug when his SUV pulled up, engine still running like it had somewhere more important to be. He came in with that brisk energy people use when they want to keep a conversation short. "Hey, Dad," he said, already scanning the shelves. "You still have that decanter? The crystal one Mom liked? Lisa wants to upgrade the wine setup for the holiday. Her folks are bringing a Pinot that needs air." He didn't sit. He didn't ask if I had plans. He went straight to the hutch like he'd rehearsed this errand in his head and decided it was a clean grab and go. "It's in the cabinet," I said, drying my hands. "Top shelf, back left." He reached, moved a stack of old coasters, and found it. He held it up to the window, turned it so the light broke across the glass, and whistled. "Classy," he said. "This is exactly the vibe we want. Lisa's mom is particular about presentation. You remember how they do it. Multiple courses, pacing, the whole thing. It's like watching a symphony. No offense." He added that last part as if he were giving me a compliment, like he was saying my backyard barbecues had their charm. But this was the major leagues. "No offense taken," I said. My voice sounded even to me, which felt like an achievement. "Your mother liked it because it kept the wine from tasting like it came out of a box." "That's all?" Tom smiled, distracted. He turned the stopper in his hand, set it back gently, and wrapped the neck with the dish towel I handed him. "Lisa's family just has a system," he said. "They really get how to make a night feel special. Music at the right volume, no awkward pauses, everybody knows where to sit. Like last year at their place, the timing was perfect. It just flowed." He said flowed twice, like the word had been in a magazine article he'd read and wanted to try on. I poured him a glass of water and set it on the table. He didn't touch it. So I said, "You're all set then. You got your menu, your seating chart, your centerpiece picked." He grinned. "Oh yeah, Maggie's handling flowers. She's good at that stuff. We're doing candles in those low holders so people can see across the table. Well..." He paused and looked around my kitchen, at the mismatched chairs and the calendar with my red X's and the little tree light blinking in daylight. His gaze softened for a second, almost kind, then moved on. "It'll be great," he said. "Finally doing it right, you know?" Finally doing it right landed with a small thud in my chest. I set the dish towel down and leaned a hip against the counter. "Am I there at all?" I asked, in this version. "That's right." He blinked like he hadn't heard the question before. "Dad, come on," he said, half laugh, half complaint. "We talked about this. Lisa's family's in town. There isn't really a place for..." He trailed off and moved his hands, searching for a word that wouldn't offend. I gave him one. "For me, it's not like that," he said quickly. "It's just easier. Her mom runs a tight ship. You'd be bored. And I don't want you to feel, out of place." He tossed the phrase out lightly, but it hit the same spot the call had hit. My hands stayed where they were. "Out of place," I repeated. "That the phrase of the season?" He shifted, looked at the decanter again. "Don't make this a thing," he said, quieter. "We'll do something after New Year's. Maybe a Buckeyes game on TV. Order wings, just us. Less pressure. I thought of them all the day before. Lisa and Maggie talking about tight and no interruptions. And the way they had arranged the night like a stage with no room for improvisation. I said, I can sit quietly and chew my food with the best of them." He smiled, small and tired. "I know," he said. "It's just better this way." There it was again. Better. Bigger table, better way, best flow. A ranking where I knew exactly where I sat. He set the decanter on the counter and took out his phone to answer a text. The screen lit his face with a busy glow. He typed fast, then slid the phone back into his coat. "I gotta roll," he said, lifting the decanter by its base. "Traffic around Easton is nuts. Lisa's got me on pickup duty. We still need ice molds. And she wants napkin rings that match the chargers. It's a whole thing." He waited, maybe to see if I'd make him feel guilty. I didn't. I just stepped forward and put my hand on the decanter for a second before letting go. "It belongs to the family," I said. "Use it well, then bring it back." He nodded. "Of course." He hesitated at the door. "Hey, thanks again for helping with the payment this month," he added, almost as an afterthought. "Just until that bonus hits." He gave me a quick smile. "An IOU without paper. You're a lifesaver. You asked for 2 months," I said. He froze a breath, then recovered. "Just being cautious," he said. "Year end. Commission timing. You know how it goes." I did know how it goes. Work is a place to hide priorities when you don't want to say them out loud. "Drive safe," I said. He left with a cheerful, "Merry Christmas, Dad," and the front door closed against the rush of cold air he let in. I watched his taillights pull away and then stood still long enough to hear the house talk. Old wood settling, the clock stepping forward by inches, the refrigerator kicking on. Those sounds always tell the truth, because they don't care how it lands. I carried the empty decanter box to the bedroom and slid open the top drawer. The folder of bank papers looked the same as it had yesterday and the day before. Calm, orderly, obedient. I took it to the kitchen table. I don't like making decisions standing up. Sitting tells your spine to join the vote. I opened my laptop, signed in, and went to the transfer page. Everything stared back without judgment. Payment scheduled. Date, December 25th. Time, 9 a.m. like a little metronome that had been ticking for months without me noticing the rhythm. There was the cancel button again, patient as a doorman. I read every line, like it was brand new. I checked the routing numbers. I checked the memo field I'd written for myself months ago. Tom Mortgage. Simple. No emotion baked into the label. I closed my eyes and pictured the decanter catching the light in Lisa's kitchen. Pictured Tom making a joke to Maggie about legs or body. Words he'd picked up to sound like the room he wanted to be in. I pictured a slice of turkey cut clean, a perfect pour, and a toast that left no air for anything that didn't fit the photograph. Then I pictured the day after, when bills go back to being bills, and a table is just a table that needs a wipe. In the quiet of that second picture, my hand moved. I clicked cancel. The screen asked if I was sure. It offered me other options: pause, reschedule, edit. I clicked confirm. The page refreshed. The neat little row went blank. I didn't fist pump. I didn't say a word. I just watched my own chest rise and fall and noticed it had been a while since it felt that even. I opened a second tab and found the branch hours for my bank on Main. They were open for walk-ins until 5. I checked the clock. 3:30. Fine. I put on my coat, grabbed the folder, and stepped into the cold. The air cleared my head like a slap of water. I drove the 2 miles with the radio off. The teller at Huntington greeted me by name because I'm the kind of man who goes to a place long enough to be recognized. I told her I needed to terminate an automatic transfer effective December 25th, and to ensure no notifications were sent to the receiving party until after that date. She looked at me, clarified, and then nodded. "We can do that," she said. "You'll still get standard account notices." "That's fine," I said. "I'll keep an eye." She typed, printed a form, and slid it across with a pen. The scratch of my signature sounded louder than it should have. She stamped the paper and made a copy for me. "All set," she said. "If you change your mind, we can reinstate it with a click." "If I change my mind," I said, "I'll come in and tell you in person." She smiled the way people do when they hear something old-fashioned. I thanked her and walked back into the gray afternoon. On the way home, I stopped at the hardware store for rock salt and a new furnace filter. I don't know why. Maybe because taking care of your house after deciding to stop taking care of someone else's feels like balance. The cashier wished me a good one, and I told her the same. Back at my place, I changed the filter, tossed the old one by the trash, and spread salt on the steps even though there was no ice yet. Insurance against what the sky might decide. When I came back in, the house felt warmer by a degree I couldn't measure. I made a sandwich and ate it at the table, looking at the space where the decanter used to sit. The glass had left a clean circle on the wood, a lighter ring where sunlight couldn't reach for years. Funny how absence draws a shape and calls it proof. I ran a finger around the circle and thought about the ring the transfer would leave now that it was gone. Another lighter place. Another reminder. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt aligned. That's the best word I have for it. My actions and my insides had finally decided to occupy the same chair. As evening came, Mary's porch light popped on, and her silhouette crossed the window with a watering can for a plant that didn't need it. Habit holds us together when feeling fails. I put the folder back in the drawer and closed it with a soft push. Then I stood for a while in the doorway of the living room, listening to the furnace hum steady and the fridge click off and the faraway sound of a train. Somewhere in a different house, my decanter would make wine breathe. In mine, the air felt easier without explaining why. Tomorrow would be its own test. Tonight, for the first time in a long while, I didn't practice conversations in my head. I let the quiet be the conversation, and it answered like an old friend who had been there the whole time. Christmas Eve came on like a low cloud, gray and quiet, the kind of day where sound gets absorbed by the air. I did the small chores that keep a man steady, swept the porch, salted the steps, checked the mailbox twice, though I knew the carrier ran late on holidays. Inside, I polished the few ornaments on my little tree and straightened the leaning star again. It still tilted. I left it. Around noon, I brewed coffee and stood at the window with the mug warming my hand. The neighborhood felt paused, like a song waiting for the next note. The text landed at 12:17 with a bright chime that didn't match the mood. It was a group photo. 20 people squeezed around a long table, crystal bright and white china shining like teeth. I recognized Lisa at the center, chin lifted, arms set just so. Maggie stood near the end, holding up a peace sign because everything is a joke if you never run out of breath. Tom was shoulder to shoulder with Lisa's dad, both of them aiming casual smiles at the camera like they'd trained for precision. The caption at the bottom read, "Nasha семья в сборе." Our family is complete. I stared at those words and let them settle where truth goes when it first arrives. The message didn't ask how I was. It didn't ask anything at all. It declared a status. It drew a circle and traced it bold. I set the phone face down and took my coffee to the garage. The smell of oil and wood has a way of pushing out whatever doesn't serve a person. I sat on the stool at my workbench and listened to the radio that never gets a perfect station out here. Static and carols, a choir behind fog. I ran my thumb along a groove in the wood and pictured that table again. Candles, linen, the decanter catching light. The one I had wrapped in a dish towel so it wouldn't chip on my son's watch. The thought should have made me angry. It didn't. It made me deliberate. There's a difference. Around 2, Mary knocked on the side door and cracked it before I could answer. She held a small pecan pie in both hands the way churches carry hymnals. "Too sweet for me," she said, which meant she made 2 and decided I should have one. Her red scarf hung open and let in a slice of cold. We talked about the neighbors' lights and how they still blinked unevenly, a house with a heartbeat. She caught the look on my face and set the pie on the counter. "You don't have to say anything," she told me. "I can tell you've decided something." I smiled a little. "I have," I said. "Then enjoy it when it comes," she answered. "And answer your phone only if you feel like it." That last part sat with me after she left. Late afternoon went blue in the windows. I cleaned the kitchen even though it was already clean. I laid a place setting for one at the table. Plate, fork, the good knife, a cloth napkin that had outlived a better life. I seared a small steak and mashed potatoes with too much butter, because some nights you choose comfort on purpose. I put on a sweater my wife had picked for me years ago, the one with elbows that remember the shape of my arms. I ate slowly and didn't rush to fill the quiet. The phone buzzed twice. Delivery notices, holiday sales, then went still again. He called at 7:41. I let it ring twice so I could hear it and not flinch. When I picked up, Tom's voice came buoyant and thin, a balloon pulling its string. "Hey, Dad, just checking on you. Everything good? You eating? We're in the middle of chaos here." Lisa's mom is being a perfectionist in the best way. I could hear clatter and well-rehearsed laughter in the background, the soundtrack of a day only some people get to star in. "I'm fine," I said. "Just finished dinner." "Great, great," he said quickly, as if I'd given the correct answer on a form. "We did a dry run earlier, and it's flowing. You should see the setup. I'll send more pictures." The kids helped with place cards. Little snowflakes next to the names. "You know how cute that is?" I said I could imagine. He chuckled like we were sharing something. Then his voice shifted, a half step down. "He wanted to make sure you weren't, lonely or anything. We'll do something next week. The Buckeyes play Saturday. Wings, your place." It sounded arranged before I had a chance to agree. "I'm not lonely," I said. "Bune, I'm good." Bune, the words were true and also a test. He hurried on, "Okay, cool. Also, thanks again for covering this month. I know I keep saying it, but it really helps. That bonus is supposed to land right after the holiday." Timing, man. I listened to him juggle convenience with gratitude, moving each ball just high enough to keep the act going. "I remember," I said. "Enjoy your night." He hesitated then, like he felt a draft where the room had been warm. "You sound... I don't know. You sound different," he said. "Did I catch you at a bad time?" "I'm having a good evening," I answered. He tried a joke. "Got a date I should know about?" I let that one pass. "I'm letting the night be what it is," I said. On his end, a fork scraped a plate, and someone laughed at a pitch people use to signal inclusion. He breathed out. "Look, Dad, I didn't mean the other day to make it weird. It's just, with Lisa's folks and the schedule and everything, it's easier to keep it, focused. Focused. Tight. Flowing. The vocabulary of people who like control more than company." "Tom," I said. And I put a little father into it, not to scold him but to get his full attention. "I heard you." I heard every word in the call and every word around the call. He went quiet. Behind him, the clink of crystal, the quick murmur of Lisa's voice, the machine of the evening humming at a perfect pace. "I know you're upset," he said. "You don't have to be. It's not personal." That old line again, the one people use when they don't want to sit with the mess they made. "It is personal when it happens to a person," I said, "and I'm a person. I'm your father." He swallowed that and tried a different angle. "We'll make it up after New Year's," he said. "Promise." He offered that word like a chaser after something bitter. I moved to the window while he talked, and looked out at the street. Snow had started, the kind that shows up like ash, soft and steady. "I'm not asking you to make anything up," I said. "I'm asking you to hear me." He was quiet again, really quiet this time. Maybe he stepped away from the noise. Maybe he pressed a shoulder to a wall and finally drop-kicked his script. "I hear you," he said. Slower now. "You think I pushed you out?" I didn't answer that. I watched the flakes catch in the porch light and melt on the warm salt I had scattered earlier, little velvet pinpricks becoming nothing. "I'll say this," I told him. "I'll be just fine tonight. I've got a plan." The word landed between us and he moved on it. "What kind of plan?" he asked. "Nothing dramatic," I said. "Just mine to have." He tried to laugh. "You're being mysterious," he said. "Since when?" I could have said, "Since the minute you drew the circle and wrote a caption under it." I could have listed years and balances and a glass decanter that made a nice picture. I didn't. I kept my dignity, the one thing I never hand over, even when I hand over money. There was another pause. I could feel him searching for a thread he recognized and not finding one. That's when I gave him the only line I wanted to give. "I'll have a special evening too, son." I said it gently because I didn't want to win a point. I wanted a truth on the record. He exhaled through his nose. "Okay," he said, uncertain. "Okay. Well, Merry Christmas, Dad." "Merry Christmas, Tom," I answered. "Enjoy your table." We hung up. The house felt still in a way that gave back instead of taking. I cleared my plate, washed it, dried it, and set it where it belongs. Then I stood at the window and watched the street turn quiet under the thin white. My phone sat on the table face down. I didn't turn it over. I didn't need more pictures to prove what I already knew. The night stretched ahead like an open road. Not loud, not empty. Mine. Christmas Day settled over the street like a blanket that had been washed too many times. Thin, familiar, and still warm where it counted. I woke early, made eggs and toast, and let the coffee drip while the furnace hummed. The TV ran the morning parade without sound. I watched the float slide down a city I didn't live in and felt no pull to be anywhere but my small kitchen. After breakfast, I wrapped the last of Mary's pecan pie in foil for later and stepped onto the porch to sweep a dusting of powder that didn't need sweeping. Motion keeps a man honest. Before noon, my phone pinged with a "Merry Christmas" from a neighbor and a photo of a lab in a Santa hat. I smiled and sent a thumbs up. A few minutes later, another ping. This time, a live photo from Tom. The frame opened on Lisa's dining room like a catalog spread. Long table, low candles, place cards with little snowflakes, the decanter shining at center like a trophy. When I pressed the image, the second of audio came to life. Maggie's voice rode the room's laughter. Here's to no pensioners derailing the conversation this year. A chorus of light ha-has followed, well-bred and quick. Tom's voice came faintly. "Mags." Then the sound clipped off, and the picture froze again. A perfect still of a world that had no use for me. I set the phone down, face up, and let the air move through me. The sting came, but smaller than before. Some hurts burn less when you finally stop arguing with their cause. I kept the day simple on purpose. I peeled a few potatoes for later and pulled a small ham from the oven around 2. The house smelled like memory, salt and sugar and heat working in agreement. I ate at the table with the cloth napkin folded just so, a small ritual to remind myself I could set a place and be worthy of it. Between bites, I watched flakes drift past the window and felt the kind of quiet I didn't need to fix. The bank paperwork sat in the drawer where I'd left it. I didn't open it. There's a time for doing and a time for letting your choices stand without new words. Afternoon tilted toward evening. I washed the dish, wiped the counter, and left the kitchen a little neater than I found it. The tree lights went on even though the room didn't ask for them. I turned the volume up on the game. Packers and Chiefs filling the screen with colors that didn't belong to Ohio, and turned it back down again. I've learned that after a hard decision, noise is just noise. Peace is what you earn. At 6:58, the phone chimed. Another photo. This one of the table mid-course. Hands raised, faces turned toward the camera. Lisa's father held his glass, ready to toast. Tom leaned in, shoulder pressed to his, performing ease. The live photo played a breath of clinking crystal and Lisa's voice. To family that shows up, the irony landed gently, like snow on a rail. I didn't reply. I didn't need to prove I wasn't there. At 7:12, the house quiet shifted. It wasn't a sound I could name, more the way a room changes when weather decides to turn. I poured a small glass of ginger ale and stood by the window. Across the street, the uneven lights finally found a rhythm. Mary's porch light clicked on even though it wasn't quite dark. I thought about my wife, the way she used to say, "Let the world do what it does. You take care of your square." I looked at my square and felt it hold. When 7:18 rolled around, my phone vibrated. Not with a message, but with that long, insistent buzz a real call makes. Unknown number. Local area code. I knew what side of the city used those digits. I let it ring once more, then swiped. Hello? I said, steady. Good evening, a woman said, voice crisp and trained. May I speak with Thomas Miller? Sounds of a room full of comfort pushed tinny against the line. The muffled clatter of silverware. A laugh that reached for attention and got it. I stepped into the hallway where the sound from my TV couldn't crowd the moment. This isn't Tom, I said. This is his father. You've reached me, I see, she said. This is Andrea with Huntington. I'm calling in reference to a returned mortgage transfer. We have a failed payment for the property on Danforth Glen. We've also recorded a cancellation of the standing authorization. We need to confirm next steps with the account holder. She said it neatly, the way people are taught to carry delicate news without dropping it. I took a breath and pictured the decanter, the snowflake place cards, Maggie's neat little joke. You'll want to call him at this number, I said, and read Tom's cell. He's at dinner. He'll step out. Thank you, Andrea said. I'll reach out now. Happy holidays, the line clicked. I set the phone on the table and watched it sit there, a small rectangle holding a new shape of consequence. I didn't feel wicked satisfaction. I felt balance, like a carpenter's level finding center. The room held its regular sounds again. The furnace, the fridge, a soft creak from the vent. A few minutes later, the phone lit up with Tom's name. It rattled on the wood, buzzing earnest. I didn't answer right away. I let it finish its first song of rings so my breath could catch up to what my spine already knew. On the second loop I picked up. Dad, he said, voice too bright and too tight. In the background, I heard the scrape of a chair and the hush that follows when a man leaves a table, but not the scene. I just got a call from the bank. They said. The back door groaned as wind pushed against it. I stepped into the living room and sat in my chair, the one with the cushion that remembers me. Let's talk outside, I said, not because I was there, but because I knew he needed to move. I heard the faint shift of air, the closing of a door that belonged to someone else's house. His breath came louder, unstyled. What is going on? He asked. They said the auto pay is canceled and today's transfer didn't go through. They're talking about a delinquency notice. I don't understand. I looked at the little tree and the star that still leaned left. I thought of Mary's words, enjoy it when it comes, and felt something like mercy. Take a seat beside me, Tom, I said. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't have to. The word carried years with it. Walk away from the door so you're not talking to a room. Then we'll discuss it. Silence for a beat while he took 3 steps farther into the cold. A car passed on his end and hissed on wet pavement. When he spoke again, the presentation had fallen from his voice. What remained sounded like the boy who used to measure his hand against mine. Okay, he said. I'm outside. I let the quiet breathe once between us. Not punishment. Preparation. The night had arranged itself to deliver a lesson and I wasn't going to overtalk it. Good, I said. Now we can speak. And that's where I left it. On the edge of a conversation we'd needed for years. With the cold air between us and the warm tables behind him, and my square held steady under my feet. I heard Tom's breath change when he stepped farther from the door. The neat music of their dinner faded behind him until all that was left was wind moving across a driveway and the low hum of a street I didn't live on. I stayed seated in my chair, one hand on the armrest, the other on the cool curve of my coffee mug. The house had that deep winter quiet around me, the kind that makes honest talk possible. All right, I said. Now we can speak. He went first, fast and defensive. The bank said the payment bounced, and the auto pay is canceled. They used words like delinquent, and notice of default, and Lisa's dad heard some of it, and now her mom is freaking out about credit scores. What is happening? Why would they even call you? His voice tried on anger, but it didn't fit. Under it was something older, fear, the sort that shows up when the show has to stop. They called because the transfers came from my account, I said. For a long time. I let a breath pass. Years, Tom. Not a month here or there. Years. He didn't answer. I could picture him standing on the steps with the phone to his ear, coat open, the warmth from the house leaking past him into the cold. I helped because I wanted your family steady, I went on. I helped because your mother would have wanted that, and because I thought a mortgage was something we could carry together until you could carry it yourselves. He tried to jam the gears back into place. You said you were fine covering 2 months. You said you understood about the bonus. I let him raise my voice. I said I'd covered a lot more than 2, and I did. But something changed. You told me I wouldn't fit at your table. You let your wife's sister joke about pensioners, derailing conversations. You sent me a picture with a caption about family being complete. Then you called to make sure I wasn't lonely, like loneliness is a box you can check while dessert is plated. That's not fair, he said quick. Dinner was complicated. It's not about you. He forced a laugh that didn't land. It's logistics, the old word, the safe word. I leaned back and let the furnace fill the next beat with warm air. Listen to me, I said. The money was never the problem. Disrespect was. You want a clean night, a tight flow, no interruptions. You made a choice about who counts and who does not. So I made a different choice. You're going to punish me? On Christmas? The anger finally found a groove. You think humiliating me in front of Lisa's family proves something? I set the mug down so gently it made no sound. I'm not humiliating you, I said. I am stopping something that humiliated me. There's a difference you're old enough to see. He paced. I could hear his steps change the way the wind hit the microphone. We could have talked, he said. You didn't give me a chance. I let that sit because it wasn't true and he knew it. We talked when you told me I'd be out of place, I said. I heard you. Tonight you get to hear me. His voice dropped, smaller now. What do you want me to say? I could almost see his shoulders. Say the truth, I answered. Say you're 38 and you left your father on the curb so a table would look good in a picture. Say I paid so you could forget who kept the lights on when the show ended. He didn't speak. A car drove by on his end and threw a short wash of sound across the phone. I let go of the last part I'd been holding. You chose another table, Tom. Now, the bill for it is yours. I didn't say it to be cruel. I said it the way a man sets down a tool when the job is finished. On his line, a soft sound broke. Maybe a breath. Maybe him pressing the heel of his hand to his eyes because he didn't want to cry on the lawn. Dad, he started, then stopped. The silence felt new, like a room we hadn't used in years. Here is what I've paid, I said. And I named the months and the extra property tax, the repairs, the times he asked for a little more. And I said yes. I kept my voice even, not reciting to shame him, but to put numbers on a scale that had been tipping without anyone looking. He let me finish. I didn't ask for a plaque, I added. I asked for a chair. He found a thread. So this is because of Lisa, he said, grasping. Because we spent the holiday with her parents. No, I said. This is because of you. You can marry whoever you want, set your life however you want, but you don't get to erase me while asking me to pay for the eraser. That landed. He blew air through his teeth, then tried one last door. What about the kids? He asked. A plea under the line. You're hurting them. I closed my eyes and saw my grandson's toy truck on my shelf. I'm not closing my door to them, I said. You are. You closed it when you started measuring me by how I looked next to your centerpiece. For a long beat, there was only the two of us, and the winter. No table, no audience. Then the boy I raised stepped forward from behind the man he'd been playing. I messed up, he said. Simple as a true thing. I thought I was keeping the night under control, and I hurt you. I'm sorry. I let it in. It didn't undo anything, and it didn't have to. Thank you, I said. You can fix what you built. Start with your bank, then fix your table. He cleared his throat. Will you turn it back on? The old habit tried to stand again. No, I said. Calm. This is yours now. I'll be your father. I won't be your bailout. He didn't argue. Okay, he said softly. Okay. I'll figure it out. He hesitated. Can I come by tomorrow? Just me. I considered the question like a man checks a door before opening it. Tomorrow afternoon, I said. You bring the decanter back. He laughed once. The sound of a man remembering where home is. I will, he said. Merry Christmas, Dad. Merry Christmas, Tom, I answered. And we ended the call. The house sighed, the way houses do when a storm changes its mind. I turned off the TV and stood in the quiet, the star on the small tree still leaning left like it refused to make a promise it couldn't keep. A soft knock came at the side door. Mary didn't wait for me to invite her. She slipped in with a thermos and 2 mugs. Tea, she said, lifting the lid. Sleepy kind. We sat at my table, steam rising between us. For a while we didn't talk. We just held the cups and listened to Nightland on the block. Finally, she looked at my face the way only old friends can and gave me the verdict I didn't know I needed. You did the right thing, she said. I let the words rest in my chest where the fire had been. When I looked up, the room felt level, like a picture finally straight on the nail. I poured her more tea and we drank to quiet victories that don't need witnesses. The phone lay face down on the table, and for once it could stay that way. The man I am and the father I try to be sat in the same chair, and it held. Thanks for listening to my story. If you like it, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts in the comments. To hear what happens in the next story, just click the box on the right. Thank you for watching.